What's the biggest myth about becoming a successful actor in Hollywood that almost nobody sees from the outside?
Mm, well, the biggest, I don't know if it's the biggest, but there are so many. One, one is I think a lot of people feel that actors or actors who've acted a lot feel very confident. No, you wake up in the morning, you think to yourself, am I going to get through it? Am I going to make it work today? You get yourself all ready, you get to the set and you deal with a lot of unpredictabilities and your doubts. You have as many doubts as you had in the beginning, perhaps more, because you realize perhaps how much you don't know all the way through. What does happen is you do develop uh, a skill set. You do develop experience will show you that you can live through disaster. And you can not to but don't read reviews until the end of the run if you're doing a play. And if you're doing a film, well, you've got to read them all together. You can't read them one at a time because you'll destroy yourself. But the myths, um, it's it's I think oh, one of the things to remember is casting directors, when you go in for a role, they really want you to be good. They really are rooting for you. And I fear that a lot of people starting out are afraid that they think, well, they're not going to like me, or I'm not going to be great, or something. They really do want you. They and everyone on the set is rooting for you, and they're there for you, and they want you to. It's like a teamwork. Um, um, Oh, I think a lot of people look, and I'm guilty of this as well. You see someone, uh, probably a lot of people feel that people who are actors who are very successful and very out there in the public eye, they think, oh, they're having a great time, and they just sort of lay around and they enjoy and they have everybody working for them and all of that, and it's all wonderful. No, no, no. First of all, you have far less privacy. You've given up your anonymity. You have to think where you're going to go. Um, Biggest, you'll go to parties, and I know this because I was famous for like 5 minutes. So you go to parties, and people will meet you, and they will know you right away, and it's fairly lonely because a lot of people will be so involved with how they're coming across to you,
Mhm.
experiencing themselves in front of you, that they don't really take you in. They're too busy experiencing the experience of talking to someone who is not a real person. They're just sort of an icon standing there in physical form before you. So and it does affect you as an act. Does it is a bit lonely. Um but there is a there can be a design to that, because I think one of the biggest myths, maybe biggest one that I would say, is thinking that all actors are um, outgoing and are not shy, and they enjoy being in the spotlight. And much of the time, that's far from the truth. I think a lot of actors are very shy, including myself. Um, you Acting is it's not really a hiding place. It's a way that you can exist, you can live in a story, you can experience within the safety of a story, so that you can be all that the story demands and live in the story, but you don't have to risk being yourself in front of people. And
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the biggest things that drew me to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what you're saying about people in the party and them being so aware that they're talking to someone who's been on TV or someone who's been in the cinemas, and it kind of makes them overthink and not treat you like a real human. It reminded me, saying a quote came up in my head when you're saying that. And it's like, do people love you for who you are or what you do? And that's kind of what it sounded like, where they know you for doing something, and then they seem kind of over the top, like, "Oh, I love you for doing that, I love you for doing this," and they're not loving you for necessarily who you are as a person because they don't know you. So it must be a weird kind of almost parasocial relationship and conversation. Have you had a lot of those experiences throughout your career then?
Yeah, I've had a number of those, in my younger years, yeah. Um, one of the pitfalls of that experience is your value of yourself is indexed to people's awareness of you, particularly as an actor, of course. It's not like you're producing something, you are selling yourself. It's really a peculiar way to make a living, really. I didn't realize that until years into I was acting. Um, you start trying to be, uh, what the people what the people, want. Um, you start your value is indexed to that. You listen for praise, or you start listening for, approval, um, um, as opposed to allowing for yourself just to be a person. And I say, and it's probably it is more difficult, and it's more difficult, especially when you grow up and you're young. You're very, very young in years where you're really just finding yourself. And I feel for people. A lot of people don't survive it, really. Getting to be say, a star in the spotlight for an extended amount of time through, say, 5, 10, 15 years, in the years of, say, 10, 11 years old, 15, 16 years old, even 21 years old, um, because you're filled with yes people, because
Mhm.
they need the performance. So you get on a set, and you got your parents, or your guardian, you've got your manager, your agent, you've got the director, the producer, and they're all wanting the performance. They need to get it, and they need you to be happy, and they need you to, so you don't necessarily really learn how to deal with people. And you don't it's a skewed way of learning about yourself. Um, uh, and and you start expecting yes, so you don't experience the friction that normal people experience in those years when you really need it, till you figure out who you are and how to deal with the world. So you're surrounded by people who saying, "Yes, great, great, great. You're wonderful. Great. Got the shot. Wonderful. Go do your school. Come back and do this." And then the heck with school, right? We need you for this part. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so this kind of leads to the next question, and it's what when you first started acting, what did you imagine making it would look like versus the reality of that? What was the day to day of your life once you did get into the spotlight versus what you imagined it to be before you'd reached that moment?
I s- I was I started acting in 3rd grade in the school plays. We had a dramatics club in our school, and the first day, 300 kids signed up for it, came to the meeting because there was nothing to do after school in those days, and except sports. Um, and we did musicals every year, and I the first experience was we did South Pacific, and I was playing a nurse, and we were on the stage, and we had our towels and pretended to be on a beach. And I remember thinking, "Oh, wow. I'm on a beach. I can pretend to be on a beach, and I can really feel like I'm on the beach," because you use your sensory and you use all that. Um, and then we did more and more. So that was really where I fell in love with acting. Um, I I then started to go out on auditions. Now, going back to the dramatics club, my mother, whose name was Lenka Peterson, that's her stage name, and she started this theater group in our grade school. And so it was kind of the family business, because I grew up in my mother's dressing room in the green room, and I grew up going to her summer stock and watching and being enamored. I remember she was doing a play on Broadway, and we came to visit her afterwards, and I walked out on stage. I think I was 6, and I looked out at the audience, and I thought, "Oh," and there was a bed on stage. It was all the way home, I think. and there was a kitchen, and the bed was sort of upstairs on stage, and I crawled up and I looked at the bed and I sat in the bed and I thought, I'd like to just stay here. I just want to stay here and sleep. I think I'll live on this place. And there was some sort of a comfort level with that. And I don't know where that comes from. I think it came from just growing up with it and the magic of pretend. And she was such a wonderful director and inspiring. And she worked with uh, Rosemary Foley, who was the co-director of our group, turned into a theater group. And so I was working in basically young people's theater for years. And during that time, I did, through my mother's agent, go up on some commercials and things and go up on some jobs. And I have 4 brothers, and one of my brothers, Darren, did a film. And then Darren was driving into New York City. We lived outside of New York City. And I accompanied him, and he went into audition, and I just sort of sat because I got a free ride into New York. And then the casting director came. I said, "Would you like to read for the girl?" I said, "Yeah, okay." And so she gave us the scripts. We went out and we had 3 hours to kill. So we went to see a movie, and the movie was called Fat City. It was a John Huston film, Jeff Bridges and Susan Terrell. And I watched that film, and I remember sitting there thinking, wow, I'm going to audition for a film. And I watched Susan Terrell and Jeff Bridges. And I thought, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to do movies. And I love doing stage. But there was something about that movie that clicked. And I went back and read for the film. And I ended up doing the film, and my brother Darren ended up becoming an attorney. He was, "To heck with Hollywood, I'm going to be a lawyer." He became a wonderful litigator and loves it very much. So that in essence is sort of a composite of my sort of introduction to it. I used to come home from school and watch $1 million movies started at 3:30 in the afternoon. And I remember the beginning of it. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but the beginning of it, and they showed the camera and everything and the music. And I remember being entranced and watching Marlon Brando do Caesar and play. It was just, I fell in love with it, fell in love with movies. And Dick Donner, remember, the director, Richard Donner, gave me some advice. He gave me one of my first jobs on a series. And he said, no, 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 tone it down, which happens with a lot of stage actors. You start doing film and they say, bring it down, bring it down. He said, it's all in the eyes. He said, it's all in the eye. You don't have to act it. It's just all in the eye. Of course it's not, but that was a great thing to remember at the time. And I took it to heart, and I guess it was good luck. But I was also, Jacob, at that time, it was the early 70s. And so I did this film, Jeremy, and with the wonderful Robbie Benson. And Robbie and I went around and did all these interviews and went to the Cannes Film Festival and won an award. We stood up and the whole place erupted in applause. And I mean, I was 17, I was 16 when we shot it, 17. And to get that kind of attention at 17 it's marvelous and addictive and dangerous and 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 all these people, because you got to do all these interviews. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I can't do, why are they so interested? Why do we have to do all these interviews? I was so naive. Um, and so, and so it was magical. It was magical in a way that the very beginning of doing the stage in the theater groups was magical. And it was also, what's wonderful about doing theater when you're young and you get into young people's theater is it's really teamwork. You are a team. You are on the front lines with each other, and you learn how to work together. You learn how to balance a stage. You learn how to listen to the other actor and respond to the other actor and really play the scene, as opposed to just counting your lines and learning your lines. Which is the first thing you do when you're a little kid and you're looking at a scene. You say, wow, I have 5 lines. This is great. Um, so so my introduction was, I was incredibly lucky. The timing was great. I happened to have a look that was popular, that they was the like the go-to look of the time. And I happened to fall into all these really wonderful films with wonderful people.
Hmm.
I was so lucky.
And
And it
how
worked. I did a lot of work. It was
yeah.
not easy, and I used to come home and see all my buddies who were, applying to college and going to and I did go to SUNY Purchase but I did not finish. I didn't go. Um, but I remember thinking, God, here they are having normal lives. And I remember being driven to the set at 4 in the morning and looking at the lights 5 in the morning turning on in the houses and apartments, and looking inside those houses and apartments and thinking they're having their breakfast, they're gonna go to work, and I wonder what that's like. And I remember thinking, I'm not complaining, but I remember
Yeah.
thinking, wonder what that's like because I really did not have a normal up I didn't have a normal I knew then it was not a normal job. It was kind of normal for me
Yeah.
because I was brought up in that world. Um, so there was a comfort level and an intrigue and an excitement.
Mm. And how long did that initial magic last when like from after doing Jeremy and getting all that attention, how long did the magic last? Did it wear off?
Um, well, it lasted for some time. I mean, a number of years because um, you have a film that gets a whole lot of attention. Then you do another film that gets a whole lot of attention. I think it was Ode to Billy Joe. And I remember someone saying to me, well, it was after the first screening of it, and he said, well, you're there. It's going to be. And I remember looking and thinking, what? It's a wonderful film. And to me, it was just work. Um, it was work. You go in, you do your job. Um, You learn your lines, you show up with ideas, um, and you're professional. Um, and I, uh, I was very reluctant to let anything quote go to my head because all my brothers would probably beat me up. So I think that was it. Um, so yeah, so the magic never really goes away. The magic of acting never really recedes because even now, whenever I work, I'll do a scene, it's like you go in and you do makeup, you do hair, you're in your costume, you arrive at the set, the camera turns on and you're in the scene. Or if you're doing stage, you exit your dressing room, you go on, you do the 90 minutes or however long the play is. And when you come back, it's like you've been away for a year because you've lived a lifetime in that 2-hour period. Or the 5 hours or the 12 hours of being on a set and staying in the character. Um, it no, it never really goes away. Um, because it's like when we're kids, we play as if, or we play make believe. Let's make believe. Let's pretend. Let's pretend. It really is that. That's what it is. It's let's pretend every time. And I was so lucky to be linked and drawn in and have people accept me and welcome me in to play pretend all these years. Right?
I
It
think
was
that
the magic, Jacob. If you're talking about this kind of magical thing of attention and being like star and having your name and going home to New Rochelle and seeing your poster with your name and going to your high school and giving a speech at a high school graduation later on and being asked to do things like that or them giving you an award and all of that is it's very heady. And however, uh, I think I think maybe I never really experienced, I think maybe the magic never really receded because, um, I think I was pretty sober in the sense that I could experience it, but a part of me was standing on the side saying, "Okay, you know what this is, and are they really talking to you?" And you just go home, and perhaps that's why I'm kind of a homebody. I don't like being in front of people. I get nervous giving speeches like anybody. I don't crave it. I'll go to a dinner party. I'm delighted to just listen to everyone. I love to ask questions, just hear about other people's lives, infinitely more interesting than my own. It's delightful when people are interested and really ask me about the experience of acting. It's wonderful. Um, but most of the time people enjoy talking about themselves. So it's fine with me.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does, when you're playing a character, how do you, or does it seep into your life? So if you're playing like a certain character, do you end up behaving like that character when you're just like at home in your kitchen or talking to your like husband or kids? Does it like seep into your everyday life? You start thinking like the character you're playing? Hey guys, first of all, I want to say thank you. There's one person who's been sharing the podcast more than anybody else, and that is you. The only reason why this podcast continues to grow is because you are sharing it. And my only ask is, if this podcast has provided value to you, or you think it'll provide value to somebody else, then if you could send them a DM of the link or a screenshot to the show, that would genuinely make my day. And it's the only way the podcast will continue to grow. That's my only ask of you. Thank you very much.
Yes, it does, Jacob. It does. You got it. It does. And I'm sure everybody feels like that. For instance, one time I was doing a play and I was playing a very erudite editor, um, a la David Remnick, let's say. Um, and, uh, and, you always take it from the script. You go right to the script. You read it, you read it over and over and over. You make notes. Um, and so I dove into it. And because the writing was so great, um, I, after learning it and playing it and getting into like the third week of rehearsals and then playing it in performances, I did bring it home. I felt so confident in talking to people. I was tip of my tongue, everything. Just it was so heady, and it lasted. It lasted about 2 months after we closed, and then of course it disappeared. But for a while, it does. And I thought, oh my God, I can be really interesting. I can be on top of all my facts. It was wonderful. And there was another one, ah, another one where I played a raving drunk, and a depressed, seemingly horrendous human being. And um, it, it took a while to get into that. And you always find a way into a character, because the key to finding a way in is you find their vulnerabilities. You find their pieces of humanity. You figure out what happened to them, or you make it up. And uh, so I did that as best as I could. However, I remember being very tense at home. I remember, fortunately, it was a location, so I wasn't around my family. But I did drive home a couple of times. Um, and, uh, and I had to stop myself a few times. Like, Glynnis, you are being, just go away and chill out. Um, you're okay. You're not this person. Um, there was that. There were others. There were accents. For instance, I did a Southern accent. That was in Ode to Billy Joe and a couple of other films. Bread Factory, I did a Southern accent. Wonderful film. There I played another editor. Um, and the accent doesn't tend to go away. In fact, I fall into it quite often. Someone wanted to ask me, I said, they said, are you from the South? Just because I fell in, because I felt a little insecure. So I fall into the Southern accent when I feel insecure, because it's the easiest. The most difficult was a New England accent in Our Town.
Oh, really?
Play,
Why?
wonderful play, Our Town, because it's it felt very foreign to me, even though here I am in New England. It kind of like yeah, here I am talking to here, there, well, and I remember feeling, oh God, we got to do the accent. Hell, Hilbert wants to do the accent. Okay, we got to do a New England accent. It's like a Boston, but not so refined as Boston. And for some reason, it was hard. And I remember working on a play where I really had to do the Queen's English. And which was felt it just you just feel so you feel like silk, when you're doing that accent. I didn't quite capture it completely, but that was just delightful. German accent, I did a German one too, which was fun.
Oh,
That
wow.
was difficult as well. That was
Yeah.
harsh.
How do you practice it? How do you practice accents?
Well, before internet, of course, I would get cassette tapes and I would just listen over and over. And for a couple of them, we had a dialect coach that would also be on the set and keep us in track. So the thing that worked for me was the whole script. I would write the phonetic sound of each word on the script with every single line, or most of the lines, especially the ones I had difficulty with, and that worked. So you listen, you work on it or you listen to the tapes, you work on it with the dialect coach, and then you work on it with your script. So when you see the word, you write it how it sounds, how the right sound that will come out of my mouth, how it sounds for me, not how a dialect coach would write it. I write it the way it sounds, and I have my own squiggles and things that mean only something to me that nobody would know what they mean. And that works, really works. Anybody who's doing accents, if just try it, it works really, really well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, at the start of the show, you mentioned kind of how we think actors are always these confident, charismatic people, and you debunked that. How have you gone through periods of self-doubt? How do you overcome maybe the days where you are feeling a bit low on confidence? How do you fight through that?
Oh, uh, early on, I remember many, 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 many calls to my mother. I'm terrible, Mom. Just to my father. I don't think I'm going to get the bottom. Just And so if you have people around you you trust, that can remind you you're a good person, you're a good actor, that really helps. Um, I think it took a while. Surprisingly, it took a lot more than, being cast in leading roles in feature films or, television. Um it took a lot of years of believing it myself and not feeling like, the imposter syndrome. There's a lot of that, and so many more people will say they have it, and they don't talk about it. Um, and maybe that's what helps you be good, but mm, I think it really helps to have people around you that know you, that can keep supporting you. And one thing that helped me, I kind of went on it backwards, because while I did have wonderful teaching, a wonderful experience with my mother, Linka, and with Rosemary, and um, in young people's theater, I mean, my mother's a member of the Actor Studio, and so she brought all these, and Rosemary was with the Second City, and they brought all of their techniques and all of their improvs and all of their games, and we used to do them. So I learned Actor Studio technique, and I used to sit in and watch Lee Strasberg, which was really cool. Um, and so I learned all that technique by the time I auditioned for Jeremy. So it was sort of I had it inside, but I didn't have it. I didn't have my own technique, um, until I studied with Bobby Lewis, the great Robert Lewis, director and teacher and professor. And I studied with him for a number of years in his master class, which was so wonderful. And what Bobby would do is he would he would have we would pair up to do scenes, and we would do each scene through every stage of rehearsal. And we would do the first scene, uh, the first time we did it in four performances, say. And the first was just the read through. We just read through the scene with each other, talk and listen. And then the second time we would um, do what he calls the left page, which is or the production talk, and the production talk, which is you talk about the theme and how the theme will drift through wardrobe, makeup, sets, character. That's the production talk. Then the third time we do it, and then you play the scene. Then the third time we go up, is you do the left page, which is for every scene, for every line, for every scene on the left page of the script when a script was, um, you do the overall action of a scene. What do you want out of the scene? And then in the middle, you do the action for every line. Like, what are you doing with that line? Are you saying, are not the action is not I'm being happy. The action is make him smile, or 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 paste a smiley face on his face, or shoot an arrow into his head, or whatever. It's actionable things you can play in your mind that will get the action of the line. And then in the third column of the left page, you write down anything that means something to you, um, that that no one else would understand. It could be a picture. It could be anything, um, and that will bring it out in your head, so that when you get to that scene, you can glance at the left page and remember, ah, right, got it. And it can change. You do it in pencil because it does change through the course of rehearsal and through the course of working on a film. So you learn so much about the character as you're going through. Um, um, so that I learned from Bobby Lewis. And so after studying with Bobby, I felt like I had a much more of a handle on some sort of technique. So I suppose after that, I felt a lot more in control. I felt more settled, um, and I was older and I had experience. So a lot of it is just age to maturity.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same, just in terms of like speaking in front of camera or emailing people that I don't know, or dealing with social situations, you know, because I remember even like 3 years ago when I was 16 or 17, I would struggle with at school, like not, I'd feel quite anxious, like just like ambient anxiety in my stomach. And I'd end up speaking to people and people probably think, oh, he's really sociable and stuff. But deep down, I was like just quite anxious, and I'd have to like after class and stuff go to the toilet just to like cool off and just like sit there, not even to like use the bathroom or anything, just to like get away from people. But then 3 years later, after, you know, working on myself and I guess learning techniques like I guess you did for acting, that's gone away and I feel completely fine now. So it is, things just compound over time, I guess, and repetition is persuasive. If you kind of repeat yourself that you are a confident person, you end up becoming it, right?
Yeah, yeah, you do. And what you're describing about going to the bathroom, I've done that.
Yeah.
That's wonderful places.
Yeah.
and, and sometimes on the set, what I'll do is I'll take out my phone and I'll just go and walk around with my phone. And I'm not really talking to anybody. I'm going over my lines, but I'm doing it so nobody will talk to me.
Yeah.
But it's good. It works.
It's good technique. Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, it's funny how we all think that nobody feels those things when probably everybody does. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard of the spotlight effect?
No, what's that?
Basically it's where you think everyone's looking at you and thinking about you. Like we naturally, or when we were younger, I used to think this. I used to think everyone was looking at me and thinking about me. But because most people think that, no one's actually looking or thinking at anyone other than themselves.
Yeah.
So like it's like this kind of like paradox in a way, because we focus so much on ourselves and we're like, oh, what's that person thinking of me about? Like, why are they thinking of me? Or that we'll make something up in our head, a story in our head that isn't true. But because everyone's thinking that, no one actually ends up thinking about anyone. Like, if you fell over in the street, and like you spilt your milkshake or something, like you'll be thinking everyone's laughing at you and has remembered that for the rest of their life. But like in reality, you're going to be the only one who remembers it 10 years later. So
This,
that kind of helped me get over like public worries and stuff like that, because realistically, everyone's got their own problems and their own struggles, and we're all quite just naturally self-centered in a way.
we are, yeah. But thank you for that. I love the spotlight effect. I'm going to remember that. And and in a way, as expanding on that, it is really hubris that we think people are that attentive to us. Right. No, they're too attentive to their own, to getting through their lives. They just doing their life and making it happen. And it frees us when we realize that, okay, I'm okay. I can just sort of exist and it doesn't matter. And stop editing myself and stop commenting. In other words, like my life is not an audition.
Mm.
And though I spent so much of my life auditioning,
Yeah.
it does seep in. And that's another thing that gets an actor, that can get to you as an actor. You just spend so much of that. But a funny thing, Jacob, is it just occurred to me as you were talking about the spotlight effect. I mean, literally, I was in the spotlight for a number of years, and young, very young. Um, it was in a funny way. It was a little protective because I thought, okay, I'm in the spotlight. It's as if I, Glynnis, myself, receded back into my heart, and they weren't really seeing me. I was acting, I was being the spotlight person that everybody needed to see. And the other thing that happens is, oh, the spotlight is on, so they're all gonna have their attitudes or their whatever they're thinking of me, so I'm safe because they're not really seeing me, and I don't have to really be I don't have to be on in a bizarre way. I felt not quite on display because I didn't feel like they were really seeing me. It's a great hiding place.
Hiding in plain sight.
Right, yeah.
Yes. So they're looking at, are they, were you thinking they're looking at the character that they've seen on the cinema screen? They're not actually looking at me, who I am as a person deep down. Is that what you mean?
Like they're as we spoke before, they're looking at who they imagine that you are. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you had the self assuredness and confidence to know who you were deep down. So that kind of gave you a buffer between what they thought and what you actually knew about yourself.
I suppose so, yeah. I suppose I was lucky in that I guess I did have that. And I think it helped me to clean up, as they say. Somebody used that phrase once, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Because we all do kind of clean up after the bizarre adolescence and teenage years and figuring yourself out. And, you sort of clean up, I guess. Um, yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for them young people who are trying to clean up and figure themselves out and find themselves?
Anybody or actors in particular?
Oh, both. Just any kind of young person.
Mhm. Um, um, oh my gosh. It's like I just wanna go out and hug everybody and say, "It's right. You are wonderful. You will be great. Don't listen to everybody. Don't take to heart everything. Don't no." It's like my mother was a wonderful one and my father just of support, wonderful. You just keep on. You can do it. If you picture yourself, imagine yourself. Imagination is such a wonderful thing. Imagine yourself in that. Imagine yourself um, in the next 2 hours um, um, with these people. Um, one trick is if you're with a group of people and you're terribly intimidated, just picture them as toddlers. And that will help. Not that you'll talk down to them, but we don't talk down to toddlers. We talk to toddlers. Or imagine them as babies, or imagine them all naked and you're not naked. I mean, all those tricks that they do work. They do work, and we forget to use them. Um, and I would say to listen to yourself and know that you can change, know that you can decide to do something with your life, and then you can change your mind. And it doesn't all, and one thing can morph into another, can morph into another. Um, and we do. Uh, um, um, people's people can have their opinions of you. It doesn't really define who you are. Who you are defines who you are. Um, just go with love, go with respect. Um, listen and learn from as many people as possible. I wish, oh God, I wish I had asked my parents so much more questions than I did. Now they're both dead. I think of all the things I wished I'd asked them. My father was in World War II. I wished I had really prodded him to tell me what it was like. He was in the Bulge, and he was in the second wave
Wow.
all through Europe. And he just, and I could, and he never liked to go to fireworks because it reminded him of being in battle. My mother, who worked, she was part of the very early actor studio, and she worked with all these greats, Brando and Paul Newman and Geraldine Page and all these. I mean, she studied with Strasberg and Kazan, and she was in Kazan's. So I wish I got a lot of training and a lot of. I did ask her a lot of questions. I wished I'd asked her more. Like, how'd you do that scene with Kazan? What kind of direction did he give you? That kind of thing. But I was young. I was having my life, and when we're young, we're so busy making our lives and doing our lives as we should. That's the time when you have energy. And so I would say just that old phrase, go for it, do it. And I remember I did do that. I followed my instincts. Um, I did go for what I was drawn to in my heart, which you really have to be, especially with acting. It's brutal. The great Donna McKechnie had a great line. She said, "There are only two professions more brutal than acting. One is boxing, and the other is prostitution." And she's right. She's right. It's really hard. You hear what's wrong with you all the time, but you can't take that to heart. If you listen and say, "What's wrong with me?" Oh, that's good. I'll remember that. Now, how can I fix that here? As opposed to, "I'm a terrible person. Oh,
Yeah.
something's wrong with me," right? Like I got a review once. Oh, God. I was doing a play. I'm so lucky. I haven't gotten that many bad reviews. Maybe I haven't read them. Anyway, this one was a play I was doing in DC, Washington, DC. It's an old play. And, and, and I was really mediocre in it. I didn't have technique. I didn't know. Everybody was very kind. And the next after it opened, and the review was, and Glynnis O'Connor, the ingenue, was probably the worst ingenue of the season, and the season has just begun. We always remember those lines. We remember the
Yeah.
worst things.
Yeah.
We remember a few good things, and I remember calling my dear friend, Jane Alexander's son, Jane, the wonderful actress. Anyway, he said, "Glynnis, you can't listen to that. Can't take that. That happens all the time." And he was right. It happens all the time. You can't listen. There will always be those people.
Mhm.
There will always be. There is only one you. And there may be like 10, 20, 100 people who are up for the job that you're going for, but there is only one you with your thoughts and your experience in the world. And that can bring your own uh, everything in your life up to to that point. And that's who people want. That's what people want in conversation, in profession, in any job you do. Relating to people. You may not have a job where you relate to people. You may be doing something else, but you're bringing yourself to it. So I'd say, you are unique. It's true. It's not just a line.
Yeah, definitely. We're N of one. Everyone's truly their own kind of niche. Like there's this advice for content creators and social media people where it's like, oh, choose your niche. Like if you're interested in pottery, just do something about pottery. But what people forget is we're so multifaceted and we have so many different interests. Like, for example, on this show, I've had a World War II historian on, and now I have you on. And then
right?
now, and then I've had a neuroscientist on last week. It's
Yeah.
because I'm interested in all of these different things. And if you just pigeonhole yourself to one niche, that kind of actually, in an almost paradoxical way, makes you less differentiated. Because if you kind of adopted all of your, or no, if you expressed all of your kind of interests, if you're making, or if you're a writer, or if you're making content, that would make you more interesting because you'd be showing more of yourself and more of your uniqueness rather than just kind of pigeonholing yourself into one extreme like hobby of yours.
Yeah, 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 and it becomes almost like a prison, and you're preventing yourself from exploring. It doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of your life. It
Mm.
doesn't even mean you have to go beyond a day of exploring it, right? You just can be free to explore. I wonder if people. I mean, it must be so hard for young people these days is just to i- is one compelled to find something that works that you can make a living at and go for it and just do that. There's always time off from work. There's always hobbies. There's always extra. And the other thing about people, like with the people that you explore, you find, and you're sure you find this people, they love to talk about themselves. They love it, and
Yeah,
because they're talking about what they're interested in, and the more comfortable they feel, then the more you get out of them, I think.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I go to this health club and a gym, and in the evenings I often go to the sauna and kind of talk to people, and then we talk to each other if I'm new to the if they're a stranger, and then I'll tell them I'm doing a podcast, and they'll like be curious about it, and I see myself get really like passionate about it, and I'm normally the one who's kind of listening and not talking, and then I get like really like just start talking about myself for 5 minutes, but then I always say to them, it's like people love one of their favorite things is they love talking about themselves. And as I say that to them, I'm like, and I'm doing it to you right now. Like I'm talking about myself. And it's like, but I love that. And I think more people should talk about their interests and their passions. And one of my favorite things to do is to listen to people who are passionate about something and do want to talk about it. It makes me so energized listening to someone talk about their passions. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, 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 yeah. It does make you feel energized. You pointed out something really, really apt. It does. It's this sort of listening. I suspect a lot of people think of listening as being a passive action, and it's not. You're very much with the person when you're listening. Yes, you're responding without the sound in a way, and you're responding just by the connection. Kind of, it's like photography. So I've done, lots of photo shoots. So one of the things I learned with a photo shoot is you have to keep on moving. The photo will capture you. You don't have to pose. But the other thing I experienced and I wonder if you experienced this as a photographer, is it's really a conversation. A photo shoot is a conversation with you and the camera, or you and the photographer. And yes, there's the camera there, but you relate to the camera. And through the camera to the photographer.
Mm.
And it's really enjoyable if you can approach it with that reality. It really is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a kind of getting back to acting in film for me, um, just because I've been doing it most of my life. When the camera is right there in front of you doing a close up, a lot of actors hate close ups because they can't move. I love close ups because I can't move, because it's just the face, it's just this, and the camera itself, the lens, it's right there. Um, and there's something that relaxes me about that just because I've been doing it so much. And probably also uh, because the experience of maybe photo shoots or something, or has been positive, because photographers have been. And I think when someone is a photographer, as you know, is you're not going to get great shots unless you're really relating, right?
Yeah,
Like, It's a
definitely.
it's it's um it's a wonderful, even if not much is spoken, it's a really fun way getting into that person's world. It's
Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Especially in like studio photography, like you're saying, where you kind of have to, like you said, you're not trying to force someone to just be rigid and not move. You want them to move around. You want them to express themselves because if they're, unless it's like you said, you enjoy not moving and having a close up in your face. If you're in the studio, um, you the subjects, especially if they're not used to being on camera that much, will feel more self-conscious if they can't express themselves, they can't talk and they can't move, and you try and make them pose in a really
Mhm,
specific way and don't let them have any improvisation,
mhm,
and try and like almost treat them like a statue. They're gonna get way more self-conscious if you do that, and you'll end up with worse shots for sure. And I think it's just also that exposure therapy, like you said, you're so used to being in front of the camera that it
yeah,
feels natural to you now. So
yeah.
is that, would that be a good tip for anyone who wants to start acting or start up their own podcast or content creating and they're shy in front of the camera? What are some other tips you have for people starting out in front of camera for the first time?
Um, with the camera in front of you, allow the camera in your head. Just have an be open to it. The to see the camera as a friend. See the camera as the allowing in a way, as opposed to shooting or um, uh, because it really is there for you, and know that it's picking everything up. Um, in a wonderful way. It really I suppose just doing just find yourself, find a camera, find a mode, find somebody who's shooting something, get into as many as you can, and and be as relaxed as possible, and also know that there is no perfect. It took me years to know that, to realize that there's no such thing as perfect. Um, it doesn't, and if there were, you don't want perfect. It's in the imperfect that we find the life and art. It is
Yeah.
it's like that. Who was the famous painter that always left an imperfection because it let the light in? So it really lets the light in. It's kind of like a metaphor for life in a way that we were talking about. Whereas, you know, you you can have a way of making money for sure, or you can have something that works for you, but don't be afraid of changing, or don't be afraid of branching out. And there is no perfect profession. There is no perfect way of having life. There is no perfect anything. There is only like respect for yourself, respect for people, kindness, and love, really.
Yeah.
I know it sounds like, but it's so true.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And there's a term used in Silicon Valley, I think when they're starting to make apps, or making their product, and it's done is better than perfect, because a lot of overthinkers will procrastinate and mask it as perfectionism. And once you kind of let go of that ideal, that standard, of course you want to have high standards, but you don't need to, you know, fiddle with the lighting for 2 hours when you could have just done it in 5 minutes and got the same result. It's definitely it can be a form of procrastination. Um, so I guess for those young people starting, it would be just start and iterate the more like as you do it, rather than trying to make it perfect the first time you step in front of camera or play that acting role or join
Mhm,
someone's little film project.
mhm, mhm, mhm. I like that. Done is better than perfect. That's really good. And yeah, figure it out. I mean, learn the ropes as much as you can, sort of get your bearings, learn a lot enough to get your bearings, learn enough to so that you'll feel uh, uh, learn your lines kind of a thing. And then you'll learn as you go. I did learn a lot as I went. I wished that I was kinder to myself and I didn't beat myself up so much. I think I would have been happier, and I probably would have been more productive, and I probably would have been a better actor. Um,
Really?
yeah, yeah. If I didn't try to be perfect so much, if I didn't, but in those days, well, now too, as a young female, um, in that environment. You know, so much is into looks. There was so much into you had to be a certain size, you had to be a certain look, it had to be, and I was lucky in the way in that I was like a go-to person at the time. I had the look, I had that they were casting at the time. Um, but but with that comes you have to have your hair a certain way. You've got to look so there was that was it's nice to be out of that. So nice. It's so I was so happy to not be an ingenue anymore. I was so happy when I turned 40. It was my best year. And get out of that.
Yeah.
And you're kind of a target when you're a young star, I think. People come at you with their needs. People come at you with themselves kind of a thing. Uh, you get hit on a lot. And I think what we were saying before, that being perfect, um, uh, like I would, people would never have thought about me as being a character actor. So what they call a character actor, which is really every actor when you think about it. But I felt more like I had to be a certain way, and I wished I hadn't had that. Took me
Yeah.
years, years. So trust yourself.
Yeah.
You're the only one with your experience in life. Yeah.
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 And how did you deal with that attention and being hit on by, you know, maybe the other sex?
Oh, just with gratefulness and kindness and appreciation and I'd sort of engage or retreat um, um, with appreciation. Really, I mean, it's nice to have attention. It's. However, when there's an overabundance of it from a seemingly artificial void way, uh, it feels somewhat unreal. So uh, I think I don't know, I would work and I would come home to my cat and I'd sleep. And I was not a big party goer, and I wish I was more. I wish I was more into people and getting out there and asking questions and you know um I would probably get a lot more out of life, a lot more out of people. I would have gotten probably a lot more out of acting and out of a career. So but with that, I think the through line in terms of what we were talking about being hit on and that kind of thing, um, um, I think the realization of why it would be happening because people see they film, um, when you see someone in a film, there's an instant connection with them, and I experienced this watching actors in movies. You just, um, um, uh, you it's not so much that you fall in love with them, but you fall into familiar with them. And and um and and so when people would come at me, somehow instinctively I knew that. Um and I would just keep it in my head. Just keep it in my head.
Mm.
But I did engage. I had a wonderful time all those years. I'm dwelling a bit too much on the burdens of it. And it wasn't so much uh that it was there were I was so lucky to be with wonderful actors, wonderful people, supportive, sympathetic, encouraging, challenging. Um, I mean, it's like I got to do 3 movies with Robbie Benson, who was heavenly. I got to work with wonderful people. I got to play a dancer where I had always wanted to be a ballet dancer, and I took ballet as a little kid. Well, I got this movie, Those Lips, Those Eyes, and Michael Pressman put me into this wonderful role as the dancer in a chorus in a summer stock. So I got to be a dancer in a film and experience that. Um, so it was It's a lot. Yes, it's a lot of work, but you want the work because it's just wonderful. So I keep on. Yeah, and there was this movie called The Bread Factory, which I did fairly recently. Patrick Wang directed it, who is remarkable. He just did a film on Rimbaud, about Rimbaud, and he would film. He shot it on Kodak film, and he would take every scene, and you'd rehearse the scenes. He had 2 weeks of rehearsal before we started shooting, and then every weekend we'd rehearse and block all the scenes we were going to do that week. And then you get to the scene, and we'd block the scene, and he would shoot it in one shot. Now I know that a lot
Wow.
of this is going on now, like with Adolescence, the series, etc. But as an actor, it's terrifying, terrifying. You just, wait, this is a 7-page scene. We're doing it all in one? Okay, doing it all in one. And then you do it, and it works, and it was great. That's one of the ones where I played an editor, a newspaper editor. Um, and he did it with every scene. It was remarkable. Really complicated scenes.
How would you not make a mistake? Do you just kind of block the idea of making a mistake out of your mind in those really long 7-page scenes? Or do you just get into the flow and just kind of go into a flow state?
The flow state does happen, and it usually happens after the first 2 lines. And 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 sometimes I would, you'd flub it and you just reset and you go again. And know that when you flub it, and you will, and it happens, it's okay. You just go back and you do it again. Happens to everybody. Just not a lot, because what you do is, as long as you've done all the prep, and I like to go over scenes and lines at different times of the day in different locations, because that's the way the words set in your head, and you get more ideas when you're going through the lines in different situations. Um, uh, so that when the camera goes and you start the first 2 lines, and you get into the mode with the actor that you're working with, and it just works. And the wonderful part is that when it can happen, which is a lot of the time, you forget almost that you're doing a scene. You forget you're playing. You ride on it, and it takes a hold of you. Um, it almost, like it plays itself. And so the lines, if I have to do a scene where I still have to think about the lines, I don't have fun with it.
Mm.
Have to get to the point where I don't have to think about them, so I can just let them be there and have a really good time. And that's where you allow the magic to come in.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why you do it. Otherwise, it's just work.
Yeah. You need, I think it's really important, if you're lucky to, like you've been, to do work that feels like play. It looks like work to others, but it feels like play to you, at least 80% of the time. Like, obviously, there's going to be some days where it does feel like a bit of a drag, but you have to really have that fulfillment, right?
Yeah, it's almost like you come in, and you work, and you're on stage, or you're doing rehearsal, or you're filming, and you come off of the scene you've played that was heaven. And there have been many, many times where I'm on my way home and I think to myself, how could anybody ever think about doing anything else than this? Or uh or my God, I can't believe they're paying me for this. Because it's just, yeah. And I imagine I imagine with anything one does, where you can bring some creativity to it. Um, and maybe it happens also, just like the way, if you bring your skill to it, and you experience that, got that to work, or got that, succeeded there. There's all these different ways of producing anything, depending on what your specialty is, or what your love is, or what brings you real satisfaction, and what you yearn for, kind of a thing.
And why don't people often do the thing that would get them the most fulfillment? Why don't they take the risk and start the, business, or start the acting career, if that's what they've genuinely been obsessed with since they were a child? Because I think the majority of people seem to, have some passion that they loved when they were a teenager, or even throughout their life. that they don't try and pursue as a career? Why do you think it's actually rare to pursue what you love as a career?
The first thing that comes to mind is discouragement from one's elders, discouragement from one's peers,
Mm,
and that will seep inside you and link up with any kind of sense of insecurity one might have. And I imagine that's the major impediment. Um, um, I think perhaps um, reading initial I don't want to say failures, but an initial um, forays into it that didn't quite work or weren't quite right, uh, frightened you. So again, reached in and linked in with your sense of insecurity or I'm not worthy or something. I imagine those are the two. Um, I think in terms of acting, uh, well, I mean, what do they say? They say it's like only that there are only 10% of actors in Screen Actors Guild that can make a living from acting, you know? There are lots of ways of being an actor. You can be in community theater. You can do film. I just found out my wonderful dentist, just a friend of his cast him in a film. He just did 3 scenes in a film. He was
nice.
and I'm sure he was wonderful. But, I mean, things can I'm not saying that's a terrible example. Um, but, uh, I feel I so feel for particularly actors, uh, that are starting out because I know how hard it is, and I also know that I didn't go through that when I was starting out because I had tremendous success so early on, and before that, I had, um, um a really lucky upbringing within the theater world, so it was my comfort. But for someone who doesn't come from a family like that, doesn't come from that, they're coming into a new where they're not quite sure, and you it just takes such a sense of self, uh, a sense of having your feet on the ground. Um, mm, don't take everything to heart. Realize that, as we said, people are much more sort of aware of themselves. Ask questions, seek out good people. Like as an actor, you learn your lines and find a good director. Good script. It all comes from the script. But a director can help you get to a performance you wouldn't have gotten to without that particular director or without
Yeah.
that kind of direction. So I would say those two things. The thing about learning your lines is the process of learning your lines means you absorb and you create the character inside you. That's what happens when you learn the lines. But it doesn't really happen until you have the lines inside, you know. At least that's my experience.
And how do you learn the lines? You mentioned you go to different locations to rehearse it, which I learned in psychology is this thing called it reduces context dependent forgetting, because they did this study where I think it was in a classroom, they asked the students to learn these things on a whiteboard, and then the students memorized it, and then they took them to a different location and asked them to recall the things that they learned, and the scores were terrible, and then they put them back into the classroom and the scores were like way better. So what are some other tips for memorizing and learning your lines that you've um, used throughout your career?
Oh, that's so great. That's such a great thing to remember as an actor. Yeah, it's first you just read the whole script and you see the progression of your character, be it one scene or be it 10 scenes or throughout the whole script. Um, and and you get your first impressions and you write down any kind of impressions, a lot of notes all over the place. At least that's how I work. um so there's that, then there's reading through it a couple more times, and then you take it scene by scene. And I do the left page, analyzing all the actions. What am I really doing here? And then once I've done that, then I start learning the lines. And then it can be as concrete as like, um, like reading one sentence in your line and rhyming a word with another word down below, like saying, "There's a T, there's a T, there's a T. Okay, I got 3 T's here, so I gotta get that in my head. I got 3 T's." Scan. Um, I have little squiggles in my own things that I write in terms of how a line sounds. Um Kind of like iambic, pentameter is the, la 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 la. If a line scans, I'll sort of mark where I hear the emphasis, and that helps me retain the line. Whether it remains when we actually play it doesn't matter. It's about remembering the line. It's about, pasting the line in your brain cells so that there are a lot of those really odd things, but it works for me, and that's so there's that. Um, and then after that, then, um, I take my phone, I take a picture of the screen of the script. I take a picture of the scenes that I really want have to focus on or each week. And I take a walk, usually in all through Central Park, New York City. So I live near there. And so I have all my walks and I walk and I run the scene in my head, just run it over and over. Sometimes I say it out loud because nobody cares when you talk out loud in New York because they all think you're somebody on your ear. And, uh, and 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 I have to make myself do this because a lot of it is uncomfortable, and you think, "Oh, I don't need to do this. I don't need to." Yes, you do need to do it, or I need to do it anyway. I'm not one of these remarkable actors that can look at a scene in the morning and play it in the afternoon. No, I can't do that. I wish I could do that. However, the whole process of it, um is all plays in the eventual playing of the scene in front of the character because then you have all those flavors. So, it's like it's like starting with just a sort of recipe in a pot and you put in 3 things and then you don't taste it or you don't let it steep. So you add a little bit of this and a little bit of that as it steeps, and then by the end of the afternoon, you've got this wonderful stew. That's kind of, how I do it. So after I walk through Central Park and I learn them, and then when I wake up in the morning, with whatever scenes I'm working on, certainly scenes we're doing that day, I don't think of anything, I don't get coffee, I will lay in my bed and I run the scene in my head. Run the scene a few times in bed before getting out of bed, in the dark. And then I get up and I'll have some coffee, then I'll run it again. And then I'll let an hour go by and I'll run again. And the other thing is I'll work on the lines for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, and then I'll stop, I'll go do something else, and then I'll come back to it and work on it. But I won't work on it for like 4 hours straight because there comes a time where you just get played and just tired and
Yeah.
it's not gonna have any effect and you're wasting time. So
Yeah.
it took me years to learn that, Jay, but it does work for me.
Yeah. Well, repetition is persuasive, isn't it? And what you were mentioning about the taking a break instead of just doing it from when you wake up to when you go to sleep. I had Dr. Joe Gibelli on, who's written a recent book called The Brain at Rest. And he speaks about how we, instead of working the entire day, we need these gaps in the day where we either do different tasks or just stare out the window and let our brain and our kind of prefrontal cortex, where we do a lot of the planning and the thinking, we let it just rest and let the other part of the brain, which I think covers 20%, called the default network, um, kind of flush everything out, clean your brain, and just give it some rest and give it some time off. And that if you end up doing that, for example, going on a walk or bird watching or having a 30-minute nap, you'll end up after that being way more productive and way more creative as a result of that. So that's kind of what sounds like what you were doing in terms of rehearsing and then do something else, and then come back to it.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like it. It's really neat to hear that there's scientific evidence that's been proven for this. Yeah, yeah. I love hearing that.
Yeah. And I feel it as well, because I said to him, that I normally have a 30-minute nap in the day if I'm at home, and sometimes I'll go from like being really just groggy and like just a bit fed up, have this 30-minute nap, and then maybe have a cold shower or put cold water on my face, and then I feel like a new person, like I've been born again. So it's kind of like that. Just having that break in the day can really just improve your performance for the
Yeah.
second half of the day. And with a normal 9 to 5 office job, most people can't do that, can they? Because they're just stuck in the office for 8 hours. I guess you could go on a walk on your lunch break, but I don't know if it's the same.
Yeah, yeah. And a walk is always a helpful thing if you have places you can take a walk. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Love
And
that. I
and
wish
what's
I
it
could
like?
middle of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love it when I'm able to do it. What's it like living in New York? How long have you lived there for? Has it been your whole life or?
Um, uh, I grew up in New Rochelle, 30 minutes outside of New York City, Manhattan. Um, I've lived in well, we moved around a lot. Um, First, I lived in Los Angeles for about 21 years or so. And then I was in between a lot, Los Angeles and I had a place in New York and a place in LA, which was wonderful and fraught because you're always kind of visiting people, telling them when you're going to be back in town. However, it worked because I could work on both coasts. Unfortunately, in the US, um, it's you just have that big divide between the 2 coasts, which is not happening because people are acting and making films everywhere now,
Yeah.
which is great. But in that time, it was one or the other. So I lived in LA. And then I decided, um, when I married, my husband, we both decided we'd rather be in New York, raise kids in New York, because we both really missed New England, the whole areas around, and we missed, being right in New York City with lots of theater and lots of places and where it lots of museums and where you could go and as they were just in Los Angeles, at least at that time, the business was show business. It was just permeated the whole culture and everything, everybody. And And aerospace as well, but mostly show business at that time, '70s and the '80s, early '90s. And, um, there's something about the business of show business where everyone is sort of looking to see who's more popular, who's hot, who's doing this, who's doing that. That is, it's just not a great environment to be around. I didn't want to have I just didn't feel like raising children within that kind of culture. And I think New York affords so much more because it's sort of everything is in New York. Um, and so we moved in '96 back to New York to an apartment. We lived in Manhattan all, since then. Actually, yeah, we tried living outside of New York, and we uh, bought a house and lived outside of New York in a place called Old Greenwich, which was beautiful, lovely town, but it was Um, I don't know. It would just it's so invigorating living in a place. I think I'm London is the same way. Any major metropolitan area where you walk down the street and you hear 5 different languages. Really, that happens to me. And I live right near a major hospital, so and that's it's just invigorating. You just walk outside for a few blocks and you're so entertained because the people are so wildly interesting and peculiar. It's like you go out on Easter morning. You ever go out on Easter morning, like in New York City? I didn't realize everybody dresses up. So we go down and we're walking down. I was with one of my brothers, and we sat down on Fifth Avenue and we watched all these ladies in their yellow and pink and everything, and everybody's. And then we see this guy across the street. He's dressed. He has a crown of thorns. He has blood dripping down, and he has a cloak, and he's barefoot. Of course, he's Jesus walking. And I thought, "Oh, whoa." And so I took a picture because I thought, "What is this guy walking barefoot?" I mean, I get it. He's sort of and then he goes and he starts blessing people. He blessed this, and then I realized he wasn't blessing anybody. He was hailing a taxi. And then Jesus got in taxi and rolled away. mean, like they say, only in New York, and then there you go,
Yeah.
New York. So, yeah, so a long answer to a very quick question was
No,
yes.
no, I've never been, so I just wanted to have a deeper understanding of what the city's like, because obviously it's so famous and so well
In
known. What
in
was
New
that, sorry?
York, well, it's yeah, um, Midtown is I live up above Midtown. I live close to Central Park, which is wonderful to be able to have that kind of space and have easy access to that kind of space. Um, um, it's super expensive, I guess, just like London. Um, it's, um, uh, it's invigorating, and you can walk. I walk all over the place, all through neighborhoods. It's like I'll take a 6-mile walk or a 3-mile walk, and there's a million things to look at. You have all these, and you can and there's there. I mean, you can live on very little if you're able to find rent stabilized apartments or get a really good rent. You can live. You can just go to museums, go to and you have this great subway system. um, you have the water. I forget it's a port city, and they got the whole downtown, which is wonderful. And you got the seagulls, and then you got Governor's Island, and then you got. I mean, it's. Sometimes I walk around, or if I'm in a cab and just driving down the FDR Drive and looking across at it. I mean, it's not just Manhattan anymore. It's everywhere. It's Brooklyn. It's Queens. It's across into New Jersey. It's the people. I guess the access to the easy physical proximity to so many different modes of being, ways of thinking, uh, different religions, different dress, different backgrounds, different places of the world you're coming from. Um, just simply visually seeing that is is like a daily dose of delight, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't wait to experience it myself. I'll have to come
Yeah.
down
Yeah,
someday.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Um, could you share a time when things didn't go as planned in your career and how you stayed motivated and consistent during this period?
Um, oh, there was let's see. Well, there was that time where yeah, there've been so, um, I found it, I found it kind of challenging. We have 2 daughters, and, when we were raising them, they're grown now. um, I found it very challenging to compartmentalize, and, I found it difficult, and I wasn't able to allow my family to just have their lives be around me. You know, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna do this film. I'm gonna do this. You can come visit me or whatever. You know, I have a hard time like that. I have a hard time having everything be about me. I'm much more comfortable being in the background. Um, so there was a time where I just would say no. No, I can't do that. I would turn down so many things. I'm waiting for my agent to fire me. Um, because I wanted to be there, and I wanted to be around, and I didn't and I didn't, I wasn't able to arrange my life, so that it would enable them to be able to accommodate me. Hire a nanny to raise your kids, or hire somebody to run the whole household so you can go do your thing and come home and be like that. I mean, there were times when I would have been able to afford that, and and just elected not to put the wherewithal into that. Um, and what got me through that, um, is, I think it was just getting up every morning and putting one foot in front of the other. And there's something about having children. Who is it? was it Toni Morrison, I think, or was it has said a great quote, she said, "For everything we have children, you wake up in the morning and you got this child looking at your face saying, 'Okay, what are we gonna do today?' And you better get up and you better have something to do, you've gotta show up." Um, so it does take your attention away, as it did me. So there were other outlets. I got involved with the schools, volunteering, um, and and that was, very rewarding. Um, uh, but but, you I think it was being able to recognize, um, thoughts of saying, "I'm no good. It's my fault. I'm not," uh, being able to recognize them for what they are, and acknowledging the choices and what those choices, result in, as opposed to "my fault." Not my fault. It's not your fault. It's circumstances. It's circumstances of life. It's meeting the needs of the loved ones around you, meeting your own needs, at the time, and then getting up every day, when for all of us a lot of times it's hard. So it's a long, um, probably incomplete answer to the question of how did I make it through. Um, there are things like um, you read. I love quote books, and sometimes I have notes uh, in my emails or computer that in my contacts I have quotes. I have all these quotes and thousands of quotes that I
Yeah,
love.
I have something similar.
Great, and they really help. So I'll go back to it and read it, and I'll read biographies.
Yes,
'Cause then you
100%
find
agree.
out what people have gone through. All we see is, like, the top 5 inches of somebody's life when we see them, or when we see them on film, or when we see what they produce, or we read about them in the paper, or we see them at a party or something. We don't think of them getting up and having their coffee and brushing their teeth and going through all their doubts and all that, all the 95% of who they are and how they do their days underneath. And, we forget there is, and biographies will really, really, yeah,
Yeah.
really, thank
I
goodness for biographies.
Yeah, more people need to read them. You're the first guest that's mentioned the power of biographies, but I think my first 5 episodes of this show was me reading biographies about people. I just absolutely love biographies so much, and similar reason as you kind of understand how they've reached a certain level of success, but also how they've dealt with the lows. And there's normally a lot of really bad moments in their life that you are so grateful for, that the fact that it hasn't happened to you, and the fact that they managed to succeed despite that, it just opens your eyes to a lot of different lives and helps you navigate yours in a way, and
Yeah.
helps you
It
understand what to avoid and what to strive
yeah,
for.
yeah. Lately, I've been reading, the Joan Didion, uh, well, her wonderful Year of Magical Thinking was just, Um, but the latest is Notes to John, it's called. It was notes from her, psychotherapy over the span of 2 or 3 years, and she would remember and write it down almost verbatim each session, and the notes have been put together to give insight into, this remarkable writer's life, and she just puts it all out there. So, it's a great example. Yeah. Which have been your favorites? Which have meant the most to you?
I really liked Arnold Schwarzenegger's one, his second one, Total Recall, because
Uh-huh.
it's just like he went from this random boy, poor guy in a tiny Austrian village, goes through bodybuilding, wins the bodybuilding competition, then just decides, yeah, I'm just going to be an actor now. And he actually ends up following the blueprint of a former bodybuilder that was older than him, which I obviously would have had no idea about. He literally copied, the guy was called Reg Park, and he copied Reg Park's blueprint and ends up becoming like a big actor and also starts these property businesses, which means allows him to only go for the star roles because he's not doing the acting for the money, because he has these businesses. And then he ends up becoming governor of California, and he just is really, it's probably the most honest autobiography as well, because he speaks about when he had an affair with his wife, on his wife, and like ruined his family and stuff. So it's really, really raw and
Mhm.
truthful. So I think that's why it's my favorite so far, but I've got plenty more to read.
I gotta look at that.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good one. What's your favorite?
Oh gosh. Oh, I don't know. Joan Didion is on my mind right now. Um, um, I love reading Judi Dench. Judi Dench, oh, it's a wonderful book. It's she goes through, actually, it's not so much an autobiography, but she goes through various parts she's played over the years, and she takes scenes. Actually, this one is all Shakespeare scenes, and she tells how she approached the scene and what she worked on, how she goes into, and what the character is thinking, and um, I think I'd probably read anything that she she put together. She's so special.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
great. She's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Um, if a young person says, "I want to be a high performer," say, a movie star or a politician or just anyone that is successful or requires a lot of kind of effort and maybe is a aspirational or ambitious goal, what advice would you give to that person, and what daily habits would increase their chances of success? For example, if they wanted to become a Hollywood actor.
I'd say, um, first, I'm such a mom. I would say eat right, get you be, make sure you got your nutrition, make sure you get your exercise, make sure you do the things for your body that put you in a place where you don't have to think about it,
Mm.
or so that um, um, people seek out and uh, engage with the people who uh, who will who are working in the space, creating whatever in the space where you see yourself. Seek them out. Um, Figure out ways to engage with them. You can even make something up. You say, "Gee, I'm going to be in your neighborhood the other day. Can I, or tomorrow, or I was thinking of something. I was thinking of something for somebody. You could help me with this. Can I ask you about this? Something I didn't do enough of growing up is approaching. Don't be afraid to approach people, because because even out of maybe 10 people who will not make themselves available to you, there will be one who will, and probably more often than not, there will be more. Um, peop Realize that people love to be sought out for them. They love they love to give advice. They love to help. They love to engage, because and if you're curious and you really come at people with respect and with curiosity and with some admiration, and also with real concrete thoughts, I would say, though, that is big, because it really is people, isn't it? Yeah. Um, get your ducks in a row, get all your get your lines if you're an actor, get your contacts if you're whoever, um, um, and keep going. Don't don't read. It's like, in the tarot cards where you get the death card? Well, it's not death. It's about a door that's opening. I don't do tarot cards. I think I just sort of heard this and I thought, "Oh, that's cool." And it's true. Death card is not a death card. A no is not a no. It's just an opening for another yes somewhere else. I mean, it's cliche, but it's true. You can't look at it. You just can't. You just, and you don't know why the no's are coming. They're coming for any myriad of reasons. For an actor, forget it. Most of the time, it's a no, and it may be because you just have something wrong, or you said something, or they're looking for another thing, and it's and if it is something that you can correct, then you go for it and you correct it. Or you just say, "Well, I'm not gonna get those parts, or I'm not gonna get that particular one, or I'm not gonna get that particular job, or that person isn't gonna or didn't work there." Don't don't look at it as that. Look at it as you're just there's gonna be it's gonna lead to another door. Find mentors, nurture them, use them. Mhm. Let allow it let your family be supportive of you. If you're lucky enough to have a family that can be supportive of you, it's great. Use your
Yeah.
friends respectfully and
Yes.
lovingly, you know, that your friends can be even more so than family sometimes, just sometimes because your family may have to, but your friends don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of biography, in Steve Jobs' biography, he said that you'd basically be surprised at how willing people are to help you, and also how little people do seek out for help. He gives the example of when he was like 13, he, I think, called up the CEO of HP, Hewlett Packard, I think it's Bill Packard, and asked him for spare parts on the phone. He like found his contact, and then Bill like laughed and said sure, gave him the parts. And then Steve ended up doing a summer job at HP when he was like 14 or 15 or 13 or something like that for a few summers. And it just reiterates what you were saying about, if you don't ask, you don't get. And just because someone doesn't reply or they don't help you, that doesn't mean they are annoyed by you. You just got to try
That's
someone else and keep going.
yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great that's a great story. Yeah.
Yeah. And what sacrifices, big or small, do people not realize um, when you're pursuing a career in acting or any high level, ambitious, creative career?
I think it's time with loved ones. Uh, uh, um, I keep wanting to say time,
Mm,
time and attention, um, be, because it is pretty all consuming. Um, Sleep for an actor in particular, or is you Meryl Streep once said this, I loved her for it. She said, "Well, you can't eat and you can't sleep when you do a film." That's for an actress, maybe. And it's true for you just can't for it's hard for me to eat when I'm acting. I mean, it's hard for me to act on a full stomach, say to say, but it's not really what I'm saying. You've got, you get fitted for costumes and for the next 2 or 3 months, you've got to be that size, whatever size. So you've got to be aware of that. So you can't eat. You don't sleep because you're up at 4 in the morning. If you're going to be awake and alive by 6 and be on the set at 7. Um, so it's and they're long, long days. They're you're yes. So I'd say it's the only time for me, it was really, really time with loved ones, and perhaps exploring other interests, exploring other possibilities, and it takes time away from the pursuing of your goals in the profession you're working so hard at. Um, but there are always ways to do that. I think it's mostly time with loved ones.
mm. And how do you navigate that? How do you deal with that constraint, really, that struggle? How do you fit family in if you're on the road or if you have the long days acting, especially if you have a young family?
I think was it Jen Alexander once gave me a really good advice. She said, when you're an actor and you're married, the rule that that is you don't have you don't go for longer than a month without seeing each other, or a month and a half, say. You just have that rule. If they have to fly halfway around the world to see you, they do it, even if it's only for a weekend. You have to see. You can't go for longer than that. Um, so um, that's one. Um, um, Choosing a life with someone who really understands what you do, I think, is really, really important. Um, Resist the temptation to fit yourself into a way of being that will allow you to have a commitment to someone who expects that, because it won't work. Uh, uh, and uh, uh, Be very open with your loved ones who you're sharing your life with to what you need, and how they can help you, and how you can help them within the constraints of what you need to do for your art, or your profession, or your job that you love. Um, let's work together. Let's work this out, as opposed to feeling I've got to turn myself inside out to make sure everybody's okay and everybody's happy. Um, and uh, I think that can work only so far, but ultimately probably will run you into trouble.
Yeah. And how do you deal with maintaining those relationships? You said about the month rule thing. That's really good. That's a really good guideline. I'm going to take that into account. And also, how do you maintain when you're not with them, when you don't have the weekend together? How do you make sure everyone's, you know, good with you and you're good with them, even if it's like your kids or your mum or your girlfriend or your husband? How do you just keep the contact, and whilst also focusing on the important thing that you have in front of you, which for you would be, you know, playing the character, doing the lines and performing? How do you kind of try and strike some sort of a balance?
Yeah. In the old days, pre-internet, it was letters. I recently went through our storage uh, bin, and I uncovered bags and bags of letters. I saved them all these letters from to uh, just oodles, to my brothers, to my mom, to my dad, to um, uh, boyfriend. Um, it's tons of letters from Robbie and to Robbie, that I did to my girlfriends, to aunts, uncles, grandma. So in the old days, it was, and of course now you sort of, you can say, you can check in with each other every day. Like my husband and I always check in with each other every day. We just call, even if it's like a 5-minute call. We just run through the day, and I'm blessed in that he loves conversation. So he's a much better at conversation than me. So we just yak, and we talk about our two daughters and our loved ones, and so you keep that. So now, um, um, uh, uh, include them in your the life that you're living, where you are away for a month. You keep that life animated with them by talking about what you're doing, to
Mhm.
hear about them, but you also let them know what you're like. Oh, somebody did this hilarious thing on the set today. Oh, I did a great scene today. Oh, I had trouble with this, or wow, this is so hot today, or excellent shot. We tried, and I mean anything. Include to the degree that you're able, and keep your concentration at the same time, so that loved ones don't feel um, like you're off somewhere else, because they don't know, they're not there. All they get is what they're hearing from you,
Yeah.
and the pictures, and um, now it's so much easier, and you got FaceTime, you got all of that now, so it's so much easier.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
don't know. There's probably something about letters though as well. You know, you don't, obviously you'd be sending less. There'd be bigger gaps in between your messages, but having like a physical handwritten, almost, even if it's not your like loved, like romantic partner. There's some romance about that just coming from someone who doesn't do that much. So yeah, I
Yes,
can imagine maybe I should send some letters to people that far from me.
it's now it's so special to get a letter. You know how now when we call people, we'll text them to say, "Can you talk?" It's very rare that I ever just pick up the phone and call anybody anymore.
Mm,
In the old days, of course, it was just a phone. And so now it's just rare that we send a physical letter, a snail mail to anyone, but it's so delightful when we receive it. Yeah. It's like a gift.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
need to send some more out for sure.
That's
Um, yeah. Is there a common trait amongst the best performers that you've noticed? Is there kind of a common thread between maybe these awesome actors on set or on stage? Are there any common threads or traits or behaviors that you've picked up on from the best?
um the first thing that comes to mind is a curiosity. Um I want to say confidence, but it's not quite right. An ease. Um an ease with themselves, which translates to an ease with people. So one feels very comfortable around them almost immediately. That's a big one. Um, um, a feeling of uh, not being intimidated is the wrong word again. It's not being too affected by the surroundings. You exist within the surroundings, but um, uh, but it doesn't intrude upon what you're doing, kind of a thing. A real respect for the people around, a real a real respect for the work, um, a kind of an honesty with 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 uh, gentleness. Not brutal honesty, just a kind of a being frank, but being nice. Mm. I remember I was working with Rosemary Harris, and she had such wonderful grace on the set. She was just heaven. Um, and she was so giving and loving with everyone. And Julie Harris as well. Julie Harris used to sit and write letters all the time. Just write letters. Um, it's like John Travolta, who I worked with in Plastic Bubble. He he's such a lovely, wonderful guy, and he still is. All these years, he's a wonderful guy. You immediately feel comfortable with him. He's he's completely professional. He's full of ideas, loads of energy, and curious and professional and giving and I mean, and there've been a lot of people like that, but, it's just to manage that kind of exposure and that kind of stardom and attention all of those years, and still retain your essential dear wonderfulness and ease. That's something.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting. The ability. It's almost when you're saying how like the stardom thing, and also not letting kind of external influences or voices kind of become inward. It just reminded me of the analogy of kind of the inner versus outer scorecard, where if you have an outer scorecard, you care like a lot about what other people think, and whatever they say really influences you. But if you have an inner scorecard, it's almost like, again, like we were saying earlier, there's that buffer between what maybe the public think of you and what you know about yourself. It's you, if you lose respect for yourself, you decide. You're the judge, jury, and execution of your own self-esteem. As another way of putting it, having that inner scorecard, I think, is really important, especially in a career. It would seem it would be important in a career that involves a lot of public pressure and outside influences like acting seems to.
Yes, very much. Yes, exactly, exactly. And if you live by the outer scorecard to an extent, to if you live by that, it's like a death sentence. You will
Mm.
not be happy. You will not be satisfied. You will be a prisoner to that's a great that's I'm gonna write that one down too. The
Good.
and don't we always score ourselves? Even when
Yeah.
sometimes I say to myself, "Oh, Glennis, stop auditioning. You're not auditioning. Fine. Cares. You're just yourself." And it's like, "Oh, there you go, judging yourself again. There you go." Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard as an actor. It's harder as an actor because you're working with your body, with yourself.
Yeah.
That's why I said in the beginning, it's such a wacky profession when you think of it. Yes, it's play as we did as children, but you know, your body is your instrument and you learn how to manipulate it. You learn how to utilize sense memory and all the tools we use as actors to come up with what you've got to come up with to tell the story because you're a part of the story. And every actor, no matter how many pages that character is in, every actor is important because it takes is one moment and one actor who is not quite there to ruin a scene.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, so yeah, I love that inner and outer. That's
Yeah. And how does fear play into this? How does that maybe hamster wheel in your mind, how does that play into staying consistent and performing highly? How does maybe that fear of insufficiency or fear of not
Mm,
being good enough, even if it is, even if you are an inner scorecard person, because I think this is just as big as a problem
mm.
as being an outer scorecard person is if you're the judge during execution of your own self-esteem, then if you hold yourself to an extremely high standard and you maybe don't meet that standard every single day, then that could also have a very big toll on your performance, right?
There are two things that I'm thinking around this. The one is, and this is something I learned from Bobby Lewis, is when we feel the fear of performing, when we feel the fear, and this could go to any area of our lives. If we feel the fear of performing, um, it's actually not fear; it's energy. We're energized because, and if you have all your ducks in the row, um, you know, you have that energy. The fear is, "Oh my god, what if I fuck up? What if I do this?" It's really not that. He describes it as being energized. And he says, "Don't if you don't feel that before you perform in whatever, then you should be worried.
Mhm.
That because you won't be at your best. You'll it will catch you. Uh if you go out thinking, "Oh, I'm so relaxed, I'm just fine, and I don't really care," you know, you're not gonna get that great a performance. So we define it, we use the word fear, it's actually not, it's energy.
Yeah.
It's energy because of care. And I think a generalized fear, as we were talking about before, if you depend too much on the or if but on the outer, uh, judgment, uh or we generally have a fear or we have a generalized fear of exposure or fear of fear of being ourselves. Um, um, yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't really have. Um, um, I think it's just. I think it's recognizing that we're not alone. Everybody is. A lot of it is thinking we're the only people. Um, uh, I think you breathe through it. I think there's anxiety, there's generalized anxiety, and then there's a very specific fear of
Mm.
one particular thing
Yeah.
that you have to be wary of. You know, like if you see a bear in the distance, you wary of it. Okay. If it's generalized anxiety, it's a generalized fear that you can't even define, that you're feeling all the time, like your life is hanging on by your fingertip. Um, and with that, many, yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. And mentioning what you were saying earlier about that reframing fear as energy, a quote in my mind came up, which goes along the lines of the difference between fear and excitement before doing something is the amount of preparation you put in beforehand. So you're always going to have that kind of butterflies in your stomach. But if you've done the work and you believe in yourself and you've done the prep, it's probably just could be reframed as or be defined as excitement for the event.
And even if you haven't done any prep and you feel a generalized fear, maybe you feel like there's prep in simply being a human being that you don't have, or you don't have the wherewithal. Be content that you know that you do. And if like, just as if you're going on for a performance, you've done enough, and even if you haven't, use it as the energy that it is, and just go on with you or what you have, and you'll make it work because you're there, because you know the lines, you're there because you play the part and you're right for the part. So just go and remember your lines and have fun. um and in a way, in life, perhaps we'd be able to do the same thing or similar, is know that we were born, we came out, we breathed, we learned how to walk, we learned how to do all these things. We have our mouth, we have our eyes, we have our whatever we have, and that's enough.
Mm.
Enough. You don't have to have whatever you think you have to be worthy as a human being. It's so elementary, but we
No,
uh,
it's true. It's really, really good words of wisdom, actually. And what I'm thinking of, what comes to mind when you say that is we've already won by being born and everything else is just a bonus.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful way of looking at the world. Sometimes I play a game with myself, and, I use an as if, which is a theater thing. How about if I'm here and I'm dead, but I've come back for this day, and it really does change my and I it's not like I want to come back from the dead. It's not that at all. It's like, "Oh, wow, yeah, I remember that. Oh, look at that. Oh, what did I do? Oh, how does that taste? Oh, there's a telephone," or, "Oh, there's a car, and look at this." It's fantastic. It's like going to a mental spa.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It's really good reframe. I love the idea of reframing. I sometimes think, what would 85-year-old me think if I'm like here
Yeah.
right now, you know?
It's a great one. Yes, and how does that, and it does change, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes you just more present and like grateful and aware of things like, oh, there's no flying cars. Oh, I remember being this, flexible and not having any back pain. And oh, I was at university, Oh, I miss doing that. It just makes you kind of have that more
Uh,
presence and gratitude
yeah,
for
yeah,
the mundane often as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Even just having a sip of coffee. Like if you can't be grateful with a sip of coffee, then you're not going to be grateful owning a super yacht. I always think that to myself. You got to
Yeah,
be grateful for the small things, right?
it's a great one.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to end, last few questions. If you had one piece of advice for your 20-year-old self, what
Oh,
would it be?
oh my god. You're gonna make me cry. Um, uh, you are enough, and ask questions, particularly of your parents. Ask them. Ask them, ask them, ask them, because they won't be here later.
Mm,
Ask them, and remember that they're vulnerable. Uh, now at these ages that we are, that I am, I'm remembering them and how vulnerable they were, and you don't realize that when I didn't when I was growing up. So,
yeah,
thank you.
definitely. No, that's very good advice. Very, very good advice. And if your career is remembered for one thing, what would you want it to be? If you could be remembered for one thing, what would you want that to be?
Oh, there's certain just career. Um, Certain scenes, um, most scenes I wish I could go back and play over again. But certain scenes, one was in Bread Factory, Patrick Wang's film, in the Check for Journal office, which just played great. One scene was in Our Town. Um, uh, th- there were moments in Why Me, about a woman who lost her face, where where I kind of disappeared and the character was just flying through the scene. If I could be remembered, I guess. mm, God, perhaps, perhaps for the honesty I brought to roles. I guess that's how I would hope to be remembered. I think probably that.
Yeah. That's important. That's very good. Very good answer. You know, you don't want to be disingenuous, and I guess honesty reflects your dedication to the character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Glynnis O'Connor, ladies and gentlemen, Glynnis. I really enjoyed this. I really, really enjoyed this. This was a really good
This was
conversation.
it's such a
Yeah.
pleasure. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate your time and all the advice you've given to me and the audience. You know, you've had such a great career and clearly a lot of wisdom has come from it. So thank you for sharing it with us today. What are you currently working on?
Um, just finished work on a streaming series called Raising Canaan, Power Book 3, Raising Canaan. 50 Cent is the overall producer of the Power Book world. Um, and, uh, and I'm in one of the stories and I play, uh, it's really about family. And the great Patina Miller is in it, and Malcolm Mays and London Brown, and worked with all of them, and they're heaven. And I played a bartender who becomes a mentor for one of the characters, and
Awesome.
it was lovely. Yeah.
Nice. Sounds really cool. And where can people go if they want to find your work?
um, gosh, um, I don't know. Uh, YouTube, just Google it, I suppose. Um, I don't have a website, but I'm working on it. So old. I'm still working on a website. People don't even think of websites anymore. I'd say, Amazon, Google it, YouTube, Netflix. You could probably find anything. You could still find even Our Town. I think, uh, I think most things are available around. You can
Yeah.
just go and
Yeah.
find it.
Get searching, everybody. Search
Yeah.
up Glynis's amazing
Yeah.
films. You won't regret it. Thank you,
Get what?
Glynis. You won't
Searching.
regret it.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, Jake.
No, really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure.
If you want to start your own podcast but have no idea where to start, and you want to generate viral social media clips and get your dream guests onto your show, even from just using your laptop in your bedroom like I did, then my Pro Remote Podcast Blueprint is exactly for you. It is a private paid course and community that has every single step and process I've used and continue to use to grow this show. And I include every single secret, every single tactic I do and still use that will get you results super fast. And also, if you want to access me personally every single week, then as part of this course, you'll also be able to join live weekly calls where I go through your podcast and answer your questions to get you results much, much faster. So if you want to actually start a podcast and stop dreaming and get millions of social media views and book your dream guests in half the amount of time it took me, then click the first link in the description. Let's get on to the rest of this episode.